Welcome to Only Ghosts in the Building. This is your host, Emily Claire.
And Karen Lynn. And we have here today
Gina of Diamond State Ghost Investigators.
Yay! Thanks. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I know we did your interview a couple months ago.
It was one of our probably springtime, maybe.
Earlier interviews. And you were with Andy and
Maureen
from Diamond State Ghost Investigators,
yes.
Right? DSGI.
DSGI.
And it's so exciting. I mean, you really have a good organization. I'm
Thank
very
you.
impressed. In our interview, if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to our interview with Diamond State Ghost Investigators because it's really very interesting. But we're going to do a little recap of your background, how you got into it, and about the organization.
So I joined the team in 2009. Our original team name was Delaware Ghost Hunters, which was established in 2005.
And you're a nonprofit. So
and we are a nonprofit, yes. So I joined in 2009. We started the paranormal adventure tours at Fort Delaware in October of 2009. And we were Delaware Ghost Hunters right up until like 2012. And at that point, our team had grown quite a bit as far as team members. We started out with I think 4 or 5 team members when I first joined the team. And then we got up to at one point, I think we were at almost 20 team members. The team was established in 2005 by brothers that live in Lower Delaware. They actually left the team when I joined. They were no longer on the team. That was in 2009.
Okay.
So the team was established by somebody else. They weren't even a nonprofit organization back in 2005. It was just 2 brothers that had a passion for the paranormal and wanted to start their own team, so they did. But by the time I joined in 2009, the brothers were gone, and the team members that originated the team had left as well. So there was only maybe one other original team member when I joined. And then that person left probably in 2010 or 11. They moved out of state across the country.
So what attracted you to
the paranormal?
Yeah, going into it.
I didn't live in a haunted house. Didn't watch any of the shows or scary movies. I didn't like any of that. But as I got older, I always kind of had this, interest in wondering, what happens when you pass away? Where does your body go? Where does your soul go? Is there such thing as heaven and hell? And when I was about 15, I think, when my grandmother had passed away, and I had a dream about her. And it was very clear, I could see her very clearly. And she had told me, she said, listen, your cousin had come to visit me the night before I passed, and I wasn't able to speak to her, but please let her know that I knew she was there. And I woke up the next morning and told my mom, which was her mother, this dream I had. And I remember my mom looking at me going, how do you know that? I didn't know my cousin had gone down there the night before to visit my grandmother in the hospital. And I said, I don't know. I just, had this dream, and Granny was there telling me, tell your cousin I knew she was there, even though I couldn't speak to her. And my mom was like, that really did happen. She was, unconscious at that point.
Wow.
So that kind of stirred an interest in me in learning more about what happens after you pass away. Is a career. I work as a nurse.
Okay.
And I've worked with hospice patients and helped them in their time of need and kind of ease their suffering and help, be there for them in the end. So I guess it's just a compassion thing for me, and it's kind of helping those, giving a voice to those who passed away.
So you're not looking at the scary, spooky end of things. You're looking at who was there and who they had been.
The human aspect.
Before they passed.
Yeah.
Which is really kind of passing seems like a wrong word. I think it's just transition. Is
transition, yeah.
Right, because it's energy.
I don't know if there's a heaven or hell, right? Because I haven't been there. Don't know. But I believe there's planes, and I think when someone transitions or passes away, whatever word you want to use, they go from one plane to another plane.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not here in a physical form, but I believe their energy
Their
is
energy
still
is
around.
still there, and it's
Mhm.
still who they were when you knew them in
Yes.
real life. That
Right.
essence of who they are is
Right.
still there,
Mhm.
or who they were.
Right.
Right.
So that's, just that in 2009 too is when all the ghost hunting shows were coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And so myself and my two boys, we would watch the shows, and it just kind of built up the interest. And then we would do like old Newcastle had like ghost walking tours. We would do those. So it just kind of slowly built up my interest. And then when I saw Delaware Ghost Hunters was recruiting for new members in 2009, I put my application in, and it was a quick interview, and here I am.
There you
all
are.
these years later.
So, and you don't regret a minute of it.
I do not.
Yeah.
October, we are booked solid at Fort Delaware for the Paranormal Adventure Tour, so that's every Friday and Saturday night. And so we'll probably do some private cases after October, November or December.
Right.
But we keep communication with the homeowners who've contacted us, and they understand our schedule, and that we're booked up
Yeah,
for
right.
October.
Yeah.
And so we just try to keep in communication with them. And so-
Do you follow up with them if you're trying to resolve something or kind of
Yeah, we do
explaining-
follow up with them
what-
afterwards. Like once we've done a private investigation,
Mhm.
we do keep in touch with the homeowners and make sure they're okay. And if anything news happened, sometimes with us doing a private investigation, sometimes it stirs up more activity after we've left. And the homeowners will call us and go, hey, we're having more activity since you've been investigating. Or sometimes things go quiet. So, but we always try to keep in touch with the homeowners.
So some of the things I've heard, and kind of like a little diversion here, is that people have a tendency to bring their stuff with them. So if you have an entity that's kind of attached to you, because supposedly we all have angels and
Yeah.
other higher beings that surround us, can bring that into
Yeah, you
the
don't
home
want to
as
go into
well.
Family.
Yeah, you don't want to go
Right.
in. Yeah, you don't want to go
Family
into an
members.
investigation if you're not in the right mind spiritually. You don't want to go in there if you got, like quote unquote baggage. You know what I mean? You don't want to go in there if you're stressed out from work or you got family issues or you're going through a tough time in life. Like you just want to make sure you really are kind of clear mind and spirit when
So
you go
how
into
do
a
you
home.
clear your entity?
You just got to put yourself in that space. Now, not everybody is spiritual.
Right.
I have team members who are very spiritual, and then I have team members that are like, I'm not. And, we have a case that possibly we'll be doing in another state that there's the activity there seems very negative. And so speaking with one of my other team members about it the other night, I said to that person, I'm like, I want you to, kind of protect yourself going in there. And he's like looking at me like, protect myself. And I'm like, yeah, spiritually, I want you to protect yourself however you want to do it. And he kind of looked at me and kind of like shrugged his shoulders like, it'll be fine. So I personally don't open myself up a lot when I'm out in a case. I just kind of take it from, okay, this is what they're reporting. This is what you can debunk right away. And then what I can't figure out, then I just kind of take the more observation approach and see, let's gather all the information first and then go from there. But I don't really open myself up.
So do your clients, like, are they, if I heard or thought something, this is weird, am I going crazy, am I really experiencing this? You're going in, you can confirm that that is really happening.
Right.
It makes them feel better about that.
Sometimes it's just a sit-down conversation, with them. Years ago, we did this investigation. It was an older woman. She had a house in Newport area. And she was reporting, like, seeing a man dressed like a chef in her kitchen. She thought she saw animals sitting up on the ceiling fan in her bedroom. She reported seeing shadow figures down by the basement. Like, there was a lot. And so at that point, we were like, is this a truly happening? Or is it a delusional? You know, is she having some sort of delusion? Mental?
Yeah.
Is it she's taking too much of the wrong medication that's causing it?
Right.
Which
Like a combination of all
as
of
a
that.
nurse, I'm kind of like dying to go through her medicine cabinet to go, okay, I can see why she's having these, you know, where she thinks she's seeing these things. And as it turned out, after we investigated her house, she had a high mold case in her basement in her house. So it was like the mold spores were like all over her house.
Oh my gosh.
And if you have, you know, molds can make you very, very sick.
Yes.
And so after talking with her and explaining what we found and, you know, just having a heart-to-heart with her and talking about the mold, you know, that was kind of the end. Like, we didn't really, and she was elderly, so I don't honestly even know how much, you know, how long if she's still alive or not. But sometimes it just they just want somebody to sit and talk to them and listen to them.
Mm-hmm. You don't charge anything for it?
No, we don't charge for our services.
Okay.
Most reputable teams will not.
Yeah.
Because you're not in it. You shouldn't be in it for the money. You should be in it for you want to help people.
You want to help, or you want to satisfy your own curiosity as well, I'm sure.
I mean,
there's a lot
I
of that.
recently saw someone post, he is a minister, and he was talking about people who work in the paranormal field and who go into homes. You know, you may travel long distances, you know, you don't know, you know, you never met these people before. You're going into their house their first time. You're helping them during a very scary time for them. And he related it to like ministry work, ghost hunting and paranormal investigating. And I thought, well, that's interesting.
Especially if it's a family member that
Yeah.
you're seeing, or
It's no different than ministry. Like, you're going to help people in a time of need, and you're doing it out of your own, you know, the goodness of your own heart.
generosity.
Yeah.
I have an interesting side quest here. When I was at the Warrens Paracon yesterday, we were listening to, they were talking about the Warrens, you know, Ed and Lorraine. And there's a lot of misconceptions about them, which I actually came in with. Like, I wasn't there because of the Warrens. I was there because it was Paracon and all my friends were there. So it was interesting sitting and listening to people that actually knew them and worked with them.
Yeah.
So tell me, I don't know anything about the Warrens. So tell me about that. Not
so-
that we're getting off the subject a little bit.
You
but-
know, the Amityville Horror, right?
Yes.
And Ed and Lorraine were one of the people they were the team that came in there
Okay.
and investigated and things like that. Now, there is miscommunication and this, that, and the other, and there was like, they were kind of pushed out, and then there was a book written, and then the movie, and then apparently it was all made up.
There was a lot of assumptions.
Right. And so there's a lot of stuff, and they always said, like, people have problems with the Warrens because of they would, quotations, y'all, make things up to make things bigger than they were. And it was they're very religious. He ended up considering himself a demonologist. She was a clairvoyant, but also in the name of Jesus. Like, they were very flamboyant about their whole investigation technique. But people that knew him, like, and they all made millions of dollars, and their nephew was like, no, they would go in and they wouldn't charge anything. And he said she would answer the phone calls at 3:00 in the morning and talk to people for hours at night and never charge a dime because people needed them. And that's their job.
So he wasn't a demonologist.
No,
she wasn't.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not a demonologist. I don't know about demons. I've never experienced any of that.
Right.
So, you know, that is a whole religious aspect that I'm not privy to.
So did they really have all those flies on the windows?
Maybe.
That was
I
always,
mean, there could have
There's
been
always
like a dead rat in the wall and flies buried the maggots and then all that came out. I don't know. There's plenty of reasons to debunk it. But I was impressed, and it actually changed my mind on a lot of things listening to that. Because he sold paintings.
Yeah.
They had a museum by the end. Like, they weren't charging people. They weren't making a profit.
So they weren't using people.
Yeah.
So, and that's where you do get, I guess there's certain people that do take advantage of other people and will use their
$20 for
fame
a photo.
to go ahead and take advantage. But I think this is what we were talking about before we got started.
Yeah.
It was talking about Dharma, your
Yeah.
Dharma. So Dharma is your inner calling. So what you really feel like you should be doing with your life. And a lot of people go to work, they come home, they take care of their families, go the rat race thing. And then they wonder about what their real purpose in life is supposed to be. And a lot of times what you do during the day connects with what your real purpose is. You just don't drill down to it and say, this is what I really love and what I really feel like I could do with my life. So you do ghost investigations, but there's something there that caused you to be interested in that, and it's satisfying at some
I don't
point.
know. I think.
So I see the job is the ghost investigation.
Yeah.
But the underlying thing, you said that you enjoy helping people.
I do
You're a
enjoy
nurse.
helping people. Yeah.
So there's something about that.
I think it's just bringing comfort to people.
So
in a
your
time of need.
Dharma is helping people.
Helping people.
Yeah. And that's what really motivates it. How you do that then is a decision that's outside of the Dharma. But your inner
Like I was saying earlier when yesterday my husband says to me, good luck with the, your podcast interview tomorrow. He's like, go get it, my ghosty girl. That's what he calls me. And so he goes, ghost hunting is really your passion. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. I said, not many, I don't divulge it to many people, and not many people are into ghost hunting, which is completely fine, but I think some people love it and then, will put it on blast that they're into the paranormal and love all that. On the other hand, I like to fly under the radar, and I don't need to be publicized. I don't need a pat on the back to continue doing what I'm doing.
You don't want your own TV show?
No.
Are you sure? We could pull some strings.
I know. I do know some people.
Yeah, we're in with some people.
Yeah, but I enjoy. Sincerely, I love my team. I have the best team. I've enjoyed getting to know other team members from other teams, like Interstate Paranormal. They're a great group of people. And I've enjoyed getting to know them and you guys and Ghoul Friend Hour, like all of it's been great. But will I actively seek out to be on a TV show or, I'm not the type of person that kind of puts myself out there. Like if you find me and you find that I do paranormal investigating and then you find it fascinating and you want to talk to me about it, great. But I'm not going to put myself out there and go, hey everyone, I'm a paranormal investigator. That's not me.
Yeah.
I rather kind of just fly under the radar and
the helping people is
you don't need
your
to
focus on that.
Yeah, you don't need
where
to.
somebody else may feel differently about how
I don't feel a
they're
need to
involved
have to
with
tell
this.
everybody
Right.
What I do.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to.
And it's not an ego boost for you either.
Hell no.
Yeah.
And because it's not, it may be something different for somebody else. That doesn't mean it's wrong.
Right.
It's just different.
Right.
Some people may enjoy having that publicity, or they may feel like their role in life
Accomplishing.
is to
Yeah.
bring out information to people, or
That's us.
have experiences outside of the what most people consider the normal realm of things.
And I want people, if you're gonna get into the field of the paranormal, it can be brutal, it can be
Boring.
a lot of drama, it can be boring, and so just what you see on TV isn't necessarily.
It's boiled down.
It's a
hours and
very
hours
boiled
of-
edition
yeah,
of what really happens. But
And I think that's coming out. I like that more people are talking about that. That was the thing that we talked about a lot about in the Q&As, is like, we're here for 5 days and you're seeing 20 minutes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's not always exciting, and it's not always scary, and sometimes it's nothing.
Well,
You know?
this is like when we do our public tours at Fort Delaware. When you arrive to the fort, you're met by a fort staff member and me. And the fort staff member goes over things that the public need to know about the tour, as far as safety and where the bathrooms are and where the only smoking area is. And then I go over the paranormal side of the tour. And I always say to the group, is Fort Delaware haunted? Yes, it is. We've investigated there for 16 years. We have proof that it's haunted. However, can we guarantee you're going to have a paranormal experience tonight at the fort? No, we can't. Just because it's haunted doesn't mean at every minute you're going to have a paranormal experience. And so I think it's important that people realize that just because the location's haunted doesn't mean it's haunted,
24/7.
24/7, and you can't make something paranormal happen. If you do, then you're faking it,
Yeah.
So,
or
Has to
you're
come to you,
a beacon and
Or
you
you're
brought
a beacon.
it to you.
or you brought it with you.
Yeah.
So, right.
Because we usually have stuff happen around us, but we come in with good groups and people that have energy, and they're doing things the right way and listening the right way and debunking the right way. And those are the rules kind of you got to follow.
you have to just
get
have
that stuff.
respect.
Yeah.
You got to have the respect for the location too.
Yeah.
So just kind of to back up, Fort Delaware.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about the history of that a little bit?
Sure.
And then
I brought my
when the
little cheat
ghost
sheet.
tours are taking
Yeah.
place and things like that. Just
Yeah.
so we have it on the podcast. And I apologize for my voice. Today I woke up and this is what it is.
It's the weather.
Yesterday was fine.
It's the weather, and we were sick for so long.
Yeah, but
my
I was
voice is not.
Getting so much
Still not
better.
normal.
Now it just sort of triggered today
Yeah.
for some reason.
I was coughing a lot yesterday for no reason.
It's the weather.
Yeah.
So you want to know about the history of the fort?
Yeah,
So I don't
yes.
claim to be a historian.
So the fort is
As a disclaimer,
in Delaware City.
it's
Pea
located
Patch
on
Island.
Pea Patch Island, which is located in the middle of the Delaware River. The story of it becoming Pea Patch Island was something to the effect like a ship ran abroad onto the island and was carrying peas and
Oh,
spilled
really?
peas all over, and that's how it became Pea Patch Island.
Because they had a lot of pea patches.
Yeah, but actually it's just river sediment that's built up over through the years.
And it's not only Pea Patch Island's not only the fort, but it's a heron habitat. A bird
Yeah, they have a
habitat.
huge bird sanctuary
Yes,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the herons
So-
roost there
Yes. Yeah.
and nest.
Yeah.
So-
If you ever go to visit the fort during the day, there's what they call the prisoner trail, which is farther back off the fort, and you can go back there. And there's it's really nice. It's a new deck, and it's an overlook that you can
really,
see.
they've got.
They can,
got it
yeah, you can
built
stand up there
'cause
and observe
usually
the birds
before
out in the
it was
marsh.
just sort of like a path
Yeah,
going back.
yeah,
there.
no, they've done a nice job out there.
Cool.
Yep, and there's eagles out there,
Mm-hmm.
and occasionally you see a deer, which the first
How
time
did
I
that happen?
well, the first time I ever heard a deer, which was I was in the prisoner barracks, I can hear footsteps like clunk clunk coming up towards the prisoner barracks, and it was late, and so we're like, this is interesting. We looked out, and there was a big deer out there. So they do swim across the water.
That's quite a swim because it is.
The current is extremely
Yes.
strong there.
It is, and
at
it
the
kind of
island.
splits. It splits the Delaware River. So
Yeah.
you have shipping channel there.
Sure, yeah. So if you see the ships passing on the backside of the fort, they're heading up towards Wilmington, Philadelphia. If you see them pass the front of the fort, which is the Delaware City side. They're headed to Delaware City, the dock there for the oil
Right.
refinery. Yeah.
So, yeah, for a deer to make it across the
Yeah, this current's
Is it
very
like
strong.
phenomenal?
Right smack dab in the middle, or is it closer to, is
I
it
think it's
Jersey
closer
side?
to Delaware.
What's that? The island?
Yeah.
I don't.
Are they Jersey deer
know.
or Delaware deer?
Yeah, I don't know. Probably I would think Delaware. But no, the fort was actually erected just to be to protect the ports of Wilmington and Philadelphia. So it was never meant to be a Confederate prisoner of war, barracks.
So it wasn't Revolutionary era?
No.
Civil War era?
No, it was
built in the Civil War.
pre-Civil War.
Okay.
But it was to protect the ports, but also you have Fort Mott, which is right across the river on the New Jersey side, and then you have Fort Mott, Fort Delaware's in the middle of the river, and then you got Fort DuPont on the other side, right? So you have these three forts. So if any enemy ship was coming up the river, they weren't going to have much of a chance between Fort Mott, Fort Delaware, and Fort
Got it
DuPont.
covered, right?
So that was all to protect the ports. However, Fort Delaware never took enemy fire and never shot any fire. So it just ended up becoming a place to house Confederate and political prisoners because it's, in the middle of the river. It was easy to get prisoners there. They could just boat them out.
Escape wasn't so easy, right?
Yeah, I mean, they did try to escape. There was several prisoners that tried to escape, but they, ultimately drowned from the river and the current. In Fort Delaware, actually, there was Andersonville, which was another Confederate prisoner.
That was supposed to be horrific, Andersonville.
Yeah, so that was horrific compared to Fort Delaware. I mean, Fort Delaware, at least they had a roof over their head. They did get meals, and they got medical care, right? Where Andersonville, these guys
That was
were
in Carolinas. Where was
Yes.
Andersonville?
Yeah, I think Carolinas.
I just-
But the prisoners that came to Fort Delaware, the Confederate prisoners, they came sick. It's not like these guys came healthy and then, got sick and died at Fort Delaware because of the lack of care. These guys came really sick. They died, a lot of them, of smallpox until the smallpox vaccine, was brought about, and then they got vaccinated. But, they died of smallpox. They died of diarrhea. They died of scurvy. It was like these guys were really, really sick.
Because they had been out in the...
They'd been out in the battle. And a lot of the prisoners at Fort Delaware came from Vicksburg and Gettysburg. So that's where
So they had injuries on top of illnesses.
Some did. Most of them were illnesses and lack of nutrition. I mean, I'm sure they weren't getting
3 squares.
3 square meals out in the battlefield.
Sure.
But yeah, I was just looking over the other day, like I said, I had my little fast figure cheat sheet from Fort Delaware, and it says about 2,460 prisoners died at Fort Delaware throughout the war, and 33,000 who spent time on the island. So out of 33,000 prisoners, about 2,500 died. After the Civil War and after World War II, the state took it over in 1951, and it was in pretty bad shape. And so the state took it over and started doing renovations to make it into a living history museum, and that's what it is today.
Did they use it during World War I at all? Nothing?
No.
So it just sort of sat idle after the Civil War, after they closed it all up and sent everybody
They
home?
had guns on the roof. They were prepared. The fort was prepared.
Did they have cannons? Or
Yes.
They did,
On the
okay.
roof, yeah.
On the roof.
Yeah. They have these, actually, let me look it up. I have notes on this. The disappearing guns, which were on top of Battery Torbit, which was a later addition to the Civil War that was built in the 1890s. So when you go into Fort Delaware after you walk through the Sally Port, anything that's brick inside the fort is Civil War period, but there's a section called the Endicott or Battery Torbit. It's like when you walk into the parade grounds, it's to the right. There's a huge concrete section, and that is what is referred to as Battery Torbit or the Endicott section, and that was actually built post-Civil War. But I'll tell you about the guns they put up there, because it was kind of like very interesting how they did it. Let me see if I can find it. Battery Torbit, which is the Endicott, was constructed in 1898. It contained 3 12-inch guns hidden from the river view by disappearing carriages, and the shots could be 8 miles long. So when you go into Battery Torbit on the tour, you'll see what looks like elevator shafts in the ceiling. They're empty, but they were hoists that they would put the gunpowder in, or the whatever they were shooting off. But I think they were like almost like cannonballs. But they were like 1,000-pound each, so they would have to hoist them up through this elevator shaft to the disappearing guns, and then they could shoot them. But again, they never.
So the guns couldn't be weren't visible.
They would literally drop down into the top of the roof. Yeah, so if you were coming up the river, you wouldn't know there was guns on top of that roof.
Really? Yeah.
And then they would hoist up the powder, and then they would get it ready, and then they would basically, just lift right up out of the roof of the Endicott.
I'd be like, boom.
And boom.
Surprise.
Yeah, surprise.
Right.
Surprise cannonballs.
But they never really had to use them
No.
as
No.
as a defense system.
Right. Yeah. So
interesting.
So the prisoners were housed in the prisoner area.
it depends on their rank. So if they were high-ranking officers, Confederate officers, or political prisoners, they were kept inside the fort out of respect for their rank. If they were prisoners, Confederate prisoners, privates, or whatever, they were kept out in the prisoner barracks. There was a lot of prisoner barracks. So what you see now is just a replica of what a barrack would look like. But there was many barracks, because they could hold up to 10,000 prisoners at one time. So, but there was also a whole village at Pea Patch Island. I mean, there was a hospital, which was considered one of the state-of-the-art military hospitals in its time. There was a school, there was a church, there was all sorts of, people.
So they had people that were part of.
Yeah, so they had to have, right, so the
military
officers came there with their families. Kids went to school there. They had gardens, they had houses, they had all sorts of things. They lived like a community. It's hard to believe, like when you look at the fort now, when you just see the fort and then you see the one barrack off the side. If you don't know any better, you think, well, that was it, but it wasn't.
Okay, because I remember seeing that on a regular tour. We went in and looked at the regular.
Yeah, no, it was a whole entire town
And it was
there.
just one barrack.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they have the foundations of all of.
I don't know. I don't know what's left.
And that's the area you walk through to get to the heronry and the.
You walk
military
past
bars.
it.
Yeah, right.
It is
So from inside the fort, there were the high-ranking prisoners and political prisoners, and then the military staff that were assigned
You had
to
blacksmith,
that.
you had domestics, you had women who work as domestics.
And that was all within the fort.
That was all within the fort. When the soldiers passed away, they were buried on the island there. But with the water table being so high there, that they had to actually eventually move them over to Fort Mott and to Finn's Point Cemetery, because literally their coffins were popping up out of the ground.
Yeah.
Because of the.
Yeah,
Oh
so
my
they had to
gosh.
ship
That's like
I hadn't
Louisiana.
thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of the soldiers who passed away at Fort Delaware are buried over at Finn's Point in Fort Mott.
Fort Mott.
So really, like any entity that you come across could be.
It could be from any era.
So much that happened at this on this small island. That's a crazy.
And it is a small island.
Yeah,
I mean, it really
it's
isn't
not
very big.
that big.
Right.
So wow, yeah, you could have anybody there.
Have you found entities
Outside the fort?
fort walls?
One of the areas we investigate on our extended tour, we do go down to the prisoner barracks. We take the public down there. Not every group goes down there, but we do. That is one area we include in the extended tour. I personally haven't had a lot of anything happen down there. Other team members think it's the best part of the fort and have had activity. I think it depends on who's down there. I do think that the energy in that fort knows me. And I think sometimes they will be very interactive with me. And I think sometimes they're like, oh, it's her again. And when I go down to the barracks, I never have any luck down there, ever. Okay. But I've had other staff members or, other team members who have had it. So,
yeah. Christy was saying that her son gets interesting, different entities.
I think
activity.
Because he's young and he's a boy.
Yeah.
He gets activity.
Right.
Yeah.
My son Matt, who you guys talked to, he worked there for I think 2 summers as a historical interpreter, and he portrayed Bailey Peyton Key, I think was his name, and he was a young kid, and he was like 14 years old, and I believe maybe that Finn could possibly remind.
Was he a soldier?
Yeah, he, let me see, I have his information in here, I just gotta find it. He's a young kid, like 14. And he wouldn't have pledged allegiance to the Yankee side, I know that.
So he was a political person.
Yeah, and
Probably the youngest, huh?
I believe so, if I can find his information.
I can't imagine. That's like so young to be in such big adult situations.
But, unfortunately, during the Civil War,
that's what you had to do.
There's not much getting around it,
General Sheff, who was the commander for Fort Delaware, for some reason people refer to him as General Terror, and that is not true at all.
He wasn't terrorizing.
No, I don't know where that even came from.
So if you were a civilian working at the fort, you had accommodations on site within the fort. I don't remember seeing a lot of buildings that would be able to accommodate.
Yeah, well, a lot of it, so there's sections of the fort, of the inside of the fort that are no longer. So what you see the fort as today is not necessarily how it was back then. So like when the actual original, the room that is portrayed as the laundry area was once a kitchen, and where the laundry area really was on the other side of the fort over by the south casemates, which is now just a big open area. So like there's sections of the fort that aren't there. Where Endicott is, or Battery Torbit, that wasn't obviously there during the Civil War. So it was a mirror image of what you see on one side of the fort was on the other side of the fort. So there's a lot of things about the fort you see today that aren't there anymore. I cannot find this guy, and I was looking at him this morning. I'm like, oh, that's the guy Matt portrayed, but he was young. Oh, here he is. Reverend Handy said that Private Bailey Peyton Key of the 14th Tennessee Cavalry is the only person, save one, of his entire company who has not taken the oath of allegiance to the Yankee government. Among those who have thus proved to the cause are his 2 brothers. In a reply to a letter from his mother urging him to follow the example of his brothers, the lad wrote that he would die first.
Cool.
Yeah, he's an intelligent youth and a hero of many battles. Key was only 14 years old when photographed in 1864, which I have a picture here. After the war, Key graduated from the University of Nashville and received further medical training at Jefferson College in Philadelphia. On June 28, 1913, Bailey Peyton Key, M.D., died of pneumonia. He was 63 years old.
Wow.
And here's his picture. You can see he was a pretty young guy.
Oh, very young.
Yeah.
He looks a little defiant, doesn't he?
A little sassafras face. That's a good picture. I'll post this up. Oh, he's got the hair flip.
Yeah.
So prisoners were required to take an oath of allegiance to the...
I would imagine they probably were, or try to get them to do that.
Whatever good that did, right? You might as well say, okay, and then just change your mind later.
Yeah. I don't know the history as well as the historians do, and I was just looking through the book. But I mean, the history there is so in depth.
So if you want to know more about Fort
Fort Delaware, you should just go during the day when it's
And do a
open
history tour,
and do
but
a live history.
Also, the book that you have is readily
Yeah.
available at most pharmacies.
It's called Images of America, Fort Delaware.
But there
we'll-
were prisoners inside the fort.
Yes.
Because that's where, remember when we went in, wasn't it Fort Delaware, we did do the shoe thing because
Yes.
of the, well, let's talk about the bats, because that's,
Yeah.
That's
a real
huge thing.
issue.
Yeah.
And several years ago, maybe, 20, the white nose syndrome?
Yeah, it's
came
still there.
about.
It's still, the white nose syndrome with bats. It's a spore that kills bats.
Mhm.
It's not harmful to like dogs or cats or humans, but it makes bats very, very sick.
It's lethal
And it,
for bats.
and they will die from it. So many bats hibernate inside the fort, and that's why when we go into, there's 2 different locations in the fort that we go to on the tours, Battery Torbit and South Casemates, where the bats hibernate the most. And so to keep the spores from being brought over to the mainland, we have you put these special shoes on, and then you can walk freely through that area without collecting the spores on the bottom of your shoes. They don't even want you to like leaning up against the walls. Not that you should, because there's some really big creepy crawly things inside those areas that you don't want to be leaning up the wall against.
I think I accidentally did that, but
Yeah.
I didn't have a creepy crawly.
Yeah, and so then after the tour ends, and you're getting ready to leave to go back on the tram, there's these,
You
what
have
we
to
call
walk
the bat
through it.
mats,
Right.
which is it's like wool light and water, and you just kind of slush your feet through there, and it just pulls off some of those spores.
But some of the areas you have to put on special
The
shoes.
booties.
Those 2 areas specifically,
Yeah.
because that's where they're hibernating, and you can't see them. Like they're so small, the bats
Yeah.
are so small, and they get themselves in these little teeny tiny crevices.
Are you ever there when they come out?
Oh yeah. Yeah, sometimes
Are there a lot of them?
It depends. Like one year we were seeing quite a few of them, and then some years you don't really see them that much. So they do keep count. Denrac keeps count of the bats, and how many they're seeing every season. But they're very, very vigilant about making sure
Yeah.
that they're
doesn't
protected.
spread it. It's very contagious.
But you can travel to any state,
You're
and
gonna
there's
have
white
it.
nose syndrome. It's
Right.
like it's,
Well, you can't keep the bats inside the fort,
Yeah.
so
yeah, it's everywhere. So.
spread it.
Yeah, I don't know what they do actually do bat tours in when the fort's open during the day.
Oh,
They have a girl
interesting.
that works for Denrac, and she takes you through those areas and tells you about the bats and all that good stuff.
That's
Yeah.
cool. Just so everybody knows, when you go in and you have to wear the booties, there is a men's size and a women's size.
Yeah, they're
Because
very
I wore the
awkward.
men's size once.
They're
and I was
very
like,
awkward.
This sucks. I got the wrong one.
They're awkward to wear.
Yeah.
We keep shoe, like the kind of like shoe coverings that
Yeah. The baggy.
Medical
lips,
yeah, because I can't. Somebody's gonna fall and break their neck
Yeah.
on those other green things. They're
Yeah,
horrible.
you slip them on your shoes,
Yeah.
and then you're slopping
Yeah.
around. And
They're like weird Crocs.
Yeah, and if we have a lot of young ladies that come to the tours at night wearing like these high heel boots,
what?
and you look fantastic, but you look ridiculous trying to slam your high heel foot into a bat shoe. And we sit there and look at you and go, okay.
That was a
So
choice.
wear sensible shoes.
Yes. So if you come to our tours, please dress appropriately. You
And
cannot
it
wear
does
high
get-
heel boots and dress to the nines.
And
You're
it
at a
does-
Civil War fort.
And it does get cold inside.
Yes.
It's chilly inside
It
the
does.
casemates.
Yeah, well,
So-
it's colder on the island than it is on the mainland.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a really cold night, it's actually warm inside the fort.
Because it's breaking the wind.
Yeah, but the windows then rattle like
Say it
crazy.
that way.
Not that kind of breaking the wind.
Well, maybe some
Yeah.
can too, but.
Yeah. But yeah, no,
But
we've
yeah,
had
and the boat ride over can
Yes.
be
the boat ride over can be very
Freezing.
cold.
the
Yes.
ferry's chilly.
Yes.
So, and then there's the wagon ride from the ferry.
The tram.
Oh,
Some
you
other-
should make it a wagon. Make it like a super
Hayride thing?
hayride going on.
Yeah.
No.
I don't think Parks is going to spring for that. So, as far as the tours go, so we started these tours in 2009. It's a fundraising event for Fort
So
Delaware.
how did you connect with it's the state of Delaware, DNREC, Department of Natural Resources,
Delaware Department of
Natural Resources,
Natural Resources,
and Environmental Control,
and Recreational Management.
Recreational.
Yeah, so they're the ones that actually had reached out to past team member. He was actually an historian at the fort. His name was Rick Cohert, and sadly he passed away in 2015. But if you read Daryl's book, The Horrors of House of Wills, Daryl talks about his first time at Fort Delaware and his experience there. And the guy that took him was actually Rick.
Okay.
So Rick worked there as a historian, but he was also, and very, very spiritual, but also very into the paranormal. And so he and I joined at the same time. And because he worked at the fort, he had already kind of built up that relationship with them. And they used to call him like, oh, that's the ghost hunting guy. Like Rick was the ghost hunting guy. Right? He was a fort historian, but he was also the ghost hunting guy. And so, it was kind of Rick and their former fort historian, Lee Jennings, who also sadly passed away, that believed in the paranormal and knew that it could, really generate money because people have an interest in history, but they also have an interest in the paranormal. And so it was kind of like all came together at once.
Okay, so it was an extension of the history.
Yeah.
And the state said, okay, that sounds good to us.
They agreed to that at the fort. They obviously they're very protective of the history of the fort, as we are too. They only really want the paranormal to be highlighted in the month of October at the fort. And so when we, got in touch with them and, conversations were happening, we are the contracted team for Fort Delaware's Paranormal Adventure Tour. So,
That's cool.
So
Just
we've been doing that.
Clicked into place.
It clicked, everything kind of just meshed into place. We had no clue really. Our first night, we had no clue of how many people were going to show. Like, we knew how many tickets we sold, but is everybody going to come? Just there was no like pre-rehearsal for the paranormal tours. It was just like, okay,
Here you go.
here we go. And it was our first year was a huge success, and we just continue on. So, but the money goes back. So anybody that comes and purchases a ticket, your money's going back towards the restoration efforts of the fort. And we've raised a little over 1.8 million in 16 years doing the paranormal tours.
That's a good
It's
amount of money.
amazing.
But you don't get to go into every location of the fort, so there's really 4 areas that you get to investigate. So there's 70 tickets per tour, and then you're broken out into 7 groups of 10, color-coded. So there's a schedule we all follow, but not every group goes to the same location because
You couldn't do it all in one night.
Logistically, you can't do it that way.
And how many areas? You even have 4 areas?
4 areas. We have seven locations, but
locations,
you get
yeah.
to do 4 areas.
Yeah.
So you get to investigate. So you get, when you come, your group is assigned a historical interpreter, and they'll give you a brief history of the location you're going to. So as you're going to your first location, there's a historical interpreter leading you to that location, telling you, okay, we're going to the laundry room. This is what the laundry room was used for, and gives you just a brief synopsis of what that history is for that location. And then when you arrive, there is a DSGI team member there. We have our own equipment. We'll have all that out. We go over the equipment, we share our experiences, and then, you have an opportunity to investigate that location. You can either, some people come in, they're wanting to do it themselves. They're familiar with the paranormal, they have their own equipment, they're ready to go. Some people just come in, they stand there and stare at you and
Wait for something to
entertain
happen.
me. So,
So
yeah.
if you have a group of like-minded people, that you can stay in a group Or if you're just going as a couple, for example, you may be paired with anybody.
Correct. You may be paired with you if you're really into it. You and your friend are really into it. You may be paired with other people in your group that aren't, or you may be paired up with somebody that really is. You just never know, because everybody's there for different reasons. People seem to think ghosts come out more as it gets closer to Halloween. No, that's not true.
Or at night.
Yeah,
No.
and it's because it's October.
Right.
People feel, they're wanting to.
Well, but the energy does change in October, especially around
It
the end
depends.
of the month. I mean, just generally, because people get geared up for
Yeah.
Halloween, and we talked about energy kind of
Yeah.
helping.
I can walk in there now, and I can walk into the fort, and I just kind of stand there for a second and take it all in and go, okay, I'm here. And then I think, fort's going to be active tonight. Like, I just get this vibe. And then other times I go in there and I'm like, it's very quiet. And I've also been in there where it starts out quiet and then becomes really active for like maybe an hour, and then it dies down. So I've had all variations of activity there.
Yeah.
And like I said, you can never predict it.
No,
You can do all the things that you can do, and that's it.
Yeah.
And
no guarantees.
No,
guarantees.
there's no guarantees.
And that's no guarantees anywhere.
But again, you enjoy the experience. The
Yeah.
experience of being there. The experience
And that's what
of
I try to emphasize
seeing
to
the
people.
fort.
Like, yeah, you came over for a paranormal investigation. Great.
Yeah.
We encourage you to come back in the summertime when the fort's open to see it during the day. But if you came over tonight and you didn't have a paranormal experience, at least appreciate that you got to be inside Fort Delaware at night, because not many people get to do that.
Yeah.
So just appreciate where you are.
So do any of the history visitors during the day have experiences? Have they reported experiences?
That I don't know.
No.
I don't
I
know.
haven't heard
The
that.
stance of parks is very neutral. The staff are not allowed to say whether the fort is haunted or not. They have a very neutral stance. So if a visitor during a day comes to one of the interpreters and said, I just saw something, paranormal happen, they're going to shake their head and go, okay.
Thank you for your story.
Yeah, but they're not going to take a stance and go, you're right, the fort is haunted. A lot of times they'll say, well, you'll need to come back in October and check out the paranormal tours with DSGI.
Well, even with us, because we had the one interpreter, but then we also had a second person kind of following
The volunteers, yeah.
back behind to like make sure everybody's caught up and stuff.
Right.
Yes.
We don't wander off and get lost. Or sneak away like I want to do.
Yeah.
But they,
Or lollygag.
like we were talking to him and he's very like, don't know if I believe it, but I'm here.
I
I've
think he
never
was a
seen
little bit
anything.
into it, though.
Yeah, well, he liked listening to our stories.
Yeah.
He was
Wonder who
interested in
he had.
A
listening.
little bit into
Do you remember who you had?
No.
He was an intern. That's the only thing I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some of the interpreters have been doing the tours since we started.
Yeah.
And
He's
then
he was new.
and some of the other
I think that was
interpreters are
his
more in
first tour he was
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
whether they have their own experiences, they're not going to tell you.
Yeah, he
You
did.
know?
And
And
he
sometimes
seemed to
in
be
the past, I've had other
interested.
historical interpreters come up to me privately and go, I had this happen,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they're not going to,
So that's kind of
they have to
what I was-
remain neutral.
Yeah.
Mhm.
kind of getting at is like
Yeah.
that doesn't just because you go during the day doesn't mean that you're not going to have
Right.
some kind of an experience.
Right. And like, we do our private investigation over the night in the summertime. And what was it? Not this summer. Was it the summer before? It was very active in the fort, like extremely active inside the fort. And we were all sitting upstairs in the officers' quarters, like everybody that was there for the overnight. And we were sitting there. I had real time on. Maureen had her real time on. Trey was
I'm
to
sorry,
my
what's a real time?
real time audio, so you can hear. Got your audio recorder running, but you have headphones on, so you
Okay.
hear everything louder than if you didn't. It's
Okay.
like Trey was next to me. He had his real time on, and we could hear men talking downstairs. You could hear furniture being moved downstairs. And the look on, if we had a camera, it would have been hilarious because everybody's face was like, what the hell is that? You know, you could hear them. And I'm looking at Trey and I'm going, making the hand motion, like talking, and I'm pointing, and he's like, And so, but then we could hear footsteps coming up the stairs, and the staircase is kind of wood and metal, so it's very distinct when you hear footsteps coming up the stairs. And we could hear it and come back down, and then come back up and come back down. So we put some equipment out there, and we had the door shut in the officers' quarters. So our equipment was going off out in the hallway where the staircase was. My footstep tracker was going off. The REM pods were going off.
Wow.
And so for a while we decided to leave the door open just to see. We left the door open. Everything was kind of quiet. So then we went back to shutting the door. And I could see, like Andy was sitting next to my right, and the door would have been like right there. And I could see like my footstep tracker going off. I could see the lights. I could see the REM pod from underneath the door. And so the whole time I'm like hitting Andy, like, look, look, look. And then all of a sudden you hear, Maureen goes, who's at my parlor door? And then all of a sudden the doorknob turns. The door goes flying open. Like it sounded like somebody took their foot and just went bam into the door, and the door flew open. I had Michelle from Parks there, and another historical interpreter was with us. They were sitting kind of behind the door.
Shout out Michelle.
Shout out to Michelle. Scared the heck out of her.
Yeah.
It actually started all of us because it was so forceful.
Yeah.
And we all were like, holy, like, I won't repeat the words we were yelling, but you can imagine. And it was like, for that hour, it was super, super active. To the point where I was like, I don't know if I want to sleep up here tonight because it was so active. I did. But it was like, for the rest of the evening, it was quiet. Like, it was just like that hour. And so this past year, when we were there for overnight, it was, it was kind of quiet. And we spent a lot of time investigating the casemates, first and second levels. We went into Battery Torbit, where we always get a lot of activity, and it was just quiet. Just had a quiet vibe to it. So again, we just never know when it's gonna peak,
Pop off.
and usually happens when you least expect it.
Yeah.
But that door opening was
that
pretty
was
significant.
Crazy. Huh?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Did you put that evidence on your website,
I believe it is up there.
Matt?
Yeah, that was Matt. I think it's up there.
Yeah, he told the story where they saw the guy walk past. Was it two people? I think it was Matt.
Oh yeah, in the kitchen.
Yeah, and then
In the officer's kitchen. Yeah, so it was during the tours 2 years ago, actually. We were talking about it the other night.
Yeah.
And Matt and another team member were stationed in the kitchen in the general chef's office. And so the one team member had taken the group over to general chef's office, and one of the historical interpreters was with the group. So they were all over there. Matt and one of the other historical interpreters, who's been with the tours since day one, were over in the kitchen. And so the two of them had gone into the pantry area, and the historical interpreter was just talking to Matt about something with the inside the pantry. And as they were standing there talking, they see a man in a blue coat come walking into the kitchen and walk straight to the back. So the interpreter's thinking it's one of the guests, right?
What are they doing?
So, like, what are they doing? Because it was like a walk with purpose.
Yeah.
And so
I think they even heard the footsteps.
Yeah, they heard him and saw, like, they heard the footsteps and saw him.
Yeah.
And he had on a blue, like, military style jacket. But he walked straight into the kitchen. And so they both were like, who's that? And so they stepped out, and the historical interpreter puts his light on because, it's pitch black in there. And he's like, who was that? Like, where did they go? No doors opened or closed. Matt saw it. He saw it. Mm-hmm. So they went over to the other side, and they talked to the interpreter on that side. They're like, did anybody from your group come out. And she's like, no, we've all been sitting here.
Yep.
Hmm.
So
That's a moment.
Interesting, yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
So, you
all
know,
that stuff. Though.
the interpreters, I'm sure, have had experiences, but, you know, they remain neutral. And, you know, during the day, it's so loud and noisy over there at the public.
Mhm.
You know, you could be hearing something and easily
don't
play it
realize
off
it.
to being, you know, well, the public coming through or, you know, another worker or whatever. It's a little easier at night when it's quieter over there.
So what was the scariest thing that you had happen?
At the fort?
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like that place is very scary.
I wouldn't say, I've never felt scared over there.
No.
I've never really felt uncomfortable. I have felt like sometimes I've been watched. I had my name called, which was a little unnerving the first time I heard it. It was over in the kitchen area. And I did see a shadow figure in broad daylight step out inside. I was in the casemates with another team member. And we were talking about General Archer, who was a Confederate prisoner that was captured and brought into Fort Delaware as a prisoner. But because of his stature, being a general, he was kept inside the fort. As the story goes, he was trying to convince the prisoners to help him overthrow the fort. And so he was placed in isolation inside the fort. And then eventually he was released and went back. I think he was from Virginia. Went back home and he passed away down there. But we were talking about, we were inside the casemates and I was with my team member and it was still daylight. Like you could see outside. And it was before the tours were starting. And she was going to be inside. That was going to be her location for the night. So I was just kind of giving her like, you know, experiences to share, whatever. So we were standing there and I'm talking to her about General Archer. And as I'm talking to her, I'm facing this way, she's facing me. I see this shadow figure move out from the wall down by the wedge. And it came out and it was almost like, I see you, you see me, and it went right back into the wall. And
I was like, whoops.
yeah,
Bye.
yeah. And I literally stopped talking and I was just like staring down the hallway. And she's like, what's wrong? I'm like, did you just see that? She's like, no, because I've been looking at you. And I'm like, a shadow figure literally just stepped out of that wall or anomaly or whatever you want to call it and went back into the wall. But we were talking about General Archer. So she's like, well, maybe if you continue talking about General Archer, it'll happen. And we did. And that was kind of it. But the funny part is Matt, my son Matt, always says that he's never seen shadow figures in the casemates. And him and Andy were walking through the parade ground. And Matt was saying to Andy, I never seen any shadow figures in the casemates. Like, you know, everybody says they see something, but I've never have. Unbeknownst to him, that was happening with me, that I was seeing this shadow anomaly come out of the wall. And so Sherry and I come walking out of casemates, and I see the two of them walking towards me, and I'm like, you're not going to believe what I just saw. And Andy looked at Matt and started laughing because Matt was just saying to him, everybody says they see something in there and I never do. But then here I come going, you're not going to believe what I just saw. So it's a cool place. It's like one of my favorite places to investigate. So there was that, and my name being called. Definitely hearing footsteps. My very first night of tours, I was stationed outside the laundry room, waiting for my group to come up. I was already super nervous because it was our very, 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 very first night of tours and my first time dealing with the public. And I was standing outside waiting for the group to show up. And I heard footsteps coming up behind me and they were like boot sounding. And so I turned and looked and it was, of course, dark and no one was there. Put my flashlight on. And so I'm like, all right, you know, you're probably manifesting this in your head. And so I turned my attention back to the parade ground, waiting for my group, and I heard it again. So I'm like, all right, Gina, suck it up, Buttercup, go see what's going on. So I walked back there, put my light on everywhere. Nothing. And I thought for sure, like, it was going to be one of the fort staff, like one of his interpreters coming around, like making sure everything was, like the lanterns were, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, trying to think of a reason why I would be hearing footsteps. And never saw anything, but that area has proven to be active. It's since investigating through the years. Like we've seen weird light anomalies back there, footsteps, shadow figures. One of the guests, who's a very good friend of ours, saw what appeared to be a man kind of leaning like on top of one of the cannons like this, like looking. So
Yeah, like what you guys doing over there?
yeah.
That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
See, so really it's just a matter of odds that it's
It
going to
really
happen
is, because when you come for
you.
a tour, you're only investigating,
It's a
and I
short
put that in
time.
quotes,
Yeah.
18 minutes. You have 18 minutes to be in one location.
Yeah.
And in that 18 minutes, you have to get a quick overview of what that location is. You want to hear from the DSGI person what the activity is. And then depending on the group, either we start things off by doing an EVP session or, start doing some sort of group investigation.
Yeah.
Or and then they get time to explore, or we give them time to explore, and then just before they leave, we come back and do something as a group. So 18 minutes isn't very long at all.
Now 18 minutes and the right 18 minutes could be phenomenal,
Exactly.
but no one can guarantee that.
Yeah.
So here's a question. What do you think is the best equipment for the fort? I know different places have different, you want to have audio recorders
Yeah.
for My Haunted Manor.
Yeah.
And you want to have little trigger objects, but
Trigger objects are not bad, especially up in a kid's room.
Yeah.
Like if you bring jacks or something that they would know, marbles, something that they would recognize. With the public investigations, because it is public,
yeah.
the noise volume, and you're investigating in locations that are all in close proximity to each other. So if a group this is another part of my speech, if you're being too loud, if you're yelling, you're carrying on, you walk away from your group, you can easily walk into another location and interrupt that group.
Yeah.
So it's really important, not only for safety purposes, but to just be respectful to the other groups who are investigating. So audio recorders.
But also don't whisper.
Whispers can be you don't want to whisper, but you don't want to be yelling either.
Right.
So sometimes I'll bring my audio recorder into a location and we'll do a EVP burst. So usually I do it with them at the end. We'll get together in a circle and I tell them, okay, you got to be really quiet. Don't be moving around. We'll ask about 3 or 4 questions and then play it back and see if we get a response. And it worked really well in the casemates. We got a response. But REM pods work really well over there. EDI can work really well over there. K2 meters can work really well depending on the location. Also, we tell the public to keep their phones on airplane mode because if they get a text message or a call, it's going to set the equipment off. We do give...
your Apple Watches.
Yeah, you have to be really...
Vigilant.
And we do give out dowsing rods to the public because we've learned that not everybody has the patience to sit there and be quiet, and they want they want to be instantly satisfied that they're having a paranormal experience. And so we give them dowsing rods to try and use, and it gives them a sense if they're crossing or uncrossing, they're getting some sort of activity. Now, I am not a big fan of dowsing rods, but I get it for the public. They need that satisfying response that they got, a response with the dowsing rods or the K2. But
dowsing rods is like a capital. You need other validation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Though I do have to say, the whole My Haunted Manor, when I was dowsing in the basement for dead bodies, it was hitting where they were getting.
Yeah.
Other times.
Yeah, we actually, with the dowsing rods, now they got the new dowsing rods that light up.
Yeah.
Which I have
Those are cool.
Yeah,
They're
I have a set.
lightsabers.
Matthew gave me a set for Christmas.
Oh, sweet.
And so when we were at My Haunted Manor, we did a private investigation up there. We talked about stabilizing those dowsing rods and making one blue, one green, or one blue, one red, whatever the color, 2 different colors. Stabilizing them and seeing if the spirit energy, especially in the kids' room, could make them cross without somebody actually physically holding on to them. So I went on Amazon and I bought a paper towel holder.
Oh.
Got 2 that are metal. and we chopped off the top
Metal. That's key too.
and put the dowsing rod down inside of it
Yeah.
and kind of secured it and made sure it was level.
I love
And
that.
we put them on the floor in the kids' room. And we did one blue, one green, or whatever the colors we chose. And when I put them down, I was the only one upstairs in the kids' room. And I put them down and I explained
Yeah.
what these were for. And I'm like, if you can use your energy, you can turn these, you can make them spin around and all that. And we put them right so the camera could see them. And they did not budge.
Yeah.
So they need
To be held.
to be held. So
I think they're using
Because of your energy. Right.
They're using you.
and then people,
As a
you know,
conduit.
it's subtle hand movement. You don't, you
Right.
think you're being very, very,
You're not.
very still, but you're really not. Like I kiddingly once said, this is like our test to see how drunk the visitors are that come to our tours, because if they've been drinking over at Krabby's and they're swaying back and forth and they're holding the dowsing rods and you
Yeah.
can see the dowsing rods are like acting crazy. I'm like, oh, this is how we've been telling how many beers you had over at Krabby's. But they
is
need, your hands do move
They do.
slightly, and you may not feel it or think it, but they do. Now, my husband, one time when he came to the tours, we were upstairs in the officers' quarters, and it was myself, another old team member when we were still Delaware Ghost Hunters, one of the historical interpreters, and my husband. My husband had never held dowsing rods in his life, and so we had him hold the dowsing rods, and we were up in the dark, and it was just the four of us, and he was like, my God, my left arm was like he felt like it was getting sore, like from pressure or something. It was weird that was affecting him. He gets really weirded out in the casemates too. He feels like a pressure on his chest.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we got to figure out these dowsing rods, right? And so we played a couple games where one of the past team member, Stacy, she held up fingers behind her back, and we thought we were making communication with Jonathan, the little boy named Jonathan up there. And so we were like, all right, how many fingers is Miss Stacy holding up behind her back? And then we were like, is she holding up one finger? And my husband's holding the dowsing rods. He can't see how many fingers she had. Like, we're in the dark.
Absolutely.
And there was like, no. So finally, when he got to the correct number,
It crossed.
unbeknownst to it crossed. Wow. And so then Stacy pulls her hand out and shows us. And so I could tell he was starting to get freaked out.
Yeah.
So in the parlor of the fort, there's I think it's still there, a dish of apples. Not real apples, very hard, waxed old apples.
Yeah.
And so I said, let's do this. I'm gonna go hide the apple and see if you can figure out where the apple's hidden based on the dowsing rods.
That's cool.
So I said to the little spirit boy that was with me, and I'm like, let's go play a game. And I said, you're gonna help me hide this apple. So I walk as far down as you can get in the officers' quarters, and I placed the apple on this little wooden desk. Now, they don't know how far down I've walked because they're still sitting in the parlor. So I come back, I sit down, and I said, so then Stacy goes, where did Miss Gina hide the apple? Is it in your bedroom? No. Did she hide it in the closet? No. Did she? And we're going through these questions of where this apple could be. And so Stacy mentions finally the desk down in the other room, and they crossed.
Wow.
And so
That's awesome.
they looked at me and they're like, is it on the desk? And I'm like, I don't know. You got to go look for yourself. And so we walk down there, and my husband sees that it's on the desk, and he was like, holy shit. He was like freaked out, and he's
Yeah.
like, I'm done.
Yeah.
But again, it worked, and he still talks about it. Like,
Yeah.
it still freaks him out 10 years later.
Yeah.
And so, like, you have that, but then
Right.
if you're not holding them, they don't move.
Right.
That's,
So that's what my theory is. Like, it means your energy. You need to be able to go through your energy, and it's the copper. It's usually copper, so that's a good conduit.
Right.
But sometimes you can actually feel the tug of them.
That's what he was saying. Like, his
like,
arm felt sore, like it was tugging.
Yeah.
And I think it's also, like your energy and how open you are to the idea. Some people, they either stay poker straight or they swing back.
Do the hugs.
Or they spin in circles. Like, I don't know. I mean, we had one lady that came over, I think it was last year. She had both dowsing rods in her hands, and she was walking through the battery tour bit, and she would just stick her hand in every room that she went into. Like, kind of like shove them in there. And we're like, okay, well, that's not how they work. So
Are you taking
it's
temperature?
interesting. Yeah. So I just think they work differently for different people.
Yeah.
And that's why.
And you can influence them yourself.
Yeah, I think
By
you can.
the right
Like,
answer.
Andy and I had a conversation. He's
not
like,
consciously, but subconsciously.
subconsciously, like Andy would say to me, when I'm with a group, I'll put them in a circle and then I'll have one person hold up their hand while another person is holding them. And then I'll ask them to please point to the person that's holding up their hand. He goes, and they turn. I'm like, but the person holding them knows who's holding up their hand. So subconsciously, they're turning them.
Yeah.
So we go around and around with it.
Maybe you could do dowsing Estes method.
That is actually something we talked about doing.
I would be game for that one. That
is something we talked about. We still want to experiment with them, but I think they're fun for the groups, and I think it's good for the public to try them because obviously if we try them, it's going to be, well, you guys made it happen or you're manipulating them. But if you try them, then it's on you. And some people are scared to death to use them. Yeah. And I tell them, like, look, you're not going to bring home a whole regiment of prisoners to your house because you used them tonight, So try them out, see if you like them.
We went to the tour and now all I hear is boot steps all night long.
And like if that was the case, I'd have,
we'll come.
My house would be filled with
So here's another theory. This is my personal theory. Okay. The people on the other side are just messing with us. They're going on the other side. They're saying, "Did you see her react to that?"
I know. It's funny you say that because when I was at my home in Manor Dustin Perry, he and I were talking about that, and I said to him, I said, "Don't you ever think that the spirit energy might think we're the ghosts or we're..."
Right.
And he goes, "Absolutely," and he goes, "I've gotten even responses that were aliens." They view us as aliens. And I'm like, I could see that. So, maybe that's why they don't talk to us all the time because they think we're the
scary ones.
We're in a time slip somehow, like a weird, time is a flat circle. I always say that.
There was a movie I always refer back to called
The Others.
The Others.
That was a good
one.
Which was on that basic theory. But again, if the spirits on the other side are having a good time, they could be like, "Oh, let's do this boot steps and see what she does."
Yeah.
Or, this door opening.
That's why I think it's important when you go into any location that you, obviously you're going to go in there with respect, right? But you want to go in there, you want to introduce yourself. You want to talk to them just like you would be talking to a friend or a family member. They're humans.
Yeah.
And I think if you explain why you're there and what the equipment does, you're probably going to get a better response if you just go in there blindly and just sit there and start popping off questions.
Yeah.
This is what I tell the public. Like, yes, the fort is haunted. Can we guarantee you're gonna have a paranormal experience tonight? No. But imagine someone showing up to your house because we are in their house unannounced.
Right.
Do you always feel like entertaining people who show up to your house unannounced? No. Nowadays, you don't even want to answer your door, right? You look at the Ring camera to see who's standing out there. It's the same principle. You're in their house. And so ghosts don't owe us anything.
No.
They don't have to entertain us. They don't have to talk to us.
But you don't think they have a sense of humor?
Oh, I think they do. I think some
They're
go. Yes, I think
us in some
if they had a
cases.
sense of humor in life, they're definitely going to have a sense of humor in death as well.
Afterlife.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to go.
It'll be fun.
Yeah.
So it's every Friday, Saturday night in the month of October. We do 16 tours total.
And you sign up through the state of
You
Delaware.
have to go through the state parks.
State of Delaware website.
That's
to
how
do
you
that.
purchase your tickets. Yeah, we don't control the ticket sales. And each tour is 3 hours long. That includes your ferry time. So you have to take a ferry to the island. So if your tour starts at 6:30, that means your tour starts when you jump on that ferry at 6:30.
And
And
they
don't
don't-
be late because
Do not be late. They will
for
leave you behind. We have to go over early
Yeah.
with the Fort staff, and we have to leave at 5:30. And that boat captain has been yelling at me to get my people on the boat because I can see one coming down Clinton Street,
Yeah.
and I'm like, hurry up and park, because the boat captain's like, come on, and I'm like, okay, well, I have to wait.
Their schedule.
But so 6:30 is the start of your tour time. 9:30 is the second tour. So as soon as you get on that boat, that is the start of your tour time, and then. You get 3 hours total, and you get to investigate 4 different locations within the fort.
And
And
you get to talk to.
Yeah, and you get a break in between.
Right.
Everybody has a different break time, but you get a break up in the pavilion where you can buy concessions. You can, we have a table set up where we do a raffle. There's a campfire. It's your bathroom break.
Yeah.
If you're a smoker, you can go smoke. We tell everybody if you're going to go in there and get a cup of coffee or hot chocolate, drink it right away because you can't take your drink inside the fort. So there's nothing worse than just buying a cup of coffee or hot chocolate and then saying it's time to go.
Yeah.
You can't bring it with you. So.
And are you going to have any special visitors? Any special guests
So
this
Daryl
year?
Marston is coming
Okay.
out on Friday, October 4th. He's not really coming out as My Haunted Manor or Ghost Hunters. He's coming out as a friend.
Yeah.
So he'll be out. He's not going to be selling his book, but we do plan on raffling off 2 copies of his book.
Oh, yay. Which we love the book.
Yes.
So
We bought
put
the
your
book
raffle in.
last year.
Yeah.
That's when we met him last year. It
Yeah.
was our first tour there.
Yeah.
And
And
we bought the book.
everything just started to come together.
Yeah, for sure. So he will be out. He's going to be the plan, which I actually have to tell him, but he'll go along with it. He'll be he'll meet up with a group at their first and last location. And I tell him pick your location. You want to meet in the Battery Tour, do you want to go to Casemates? You want to go to Kitchen? And he goes wherever. He's super easy to work with. And then in between, he's in the pavilion at a table, so people can come up and talk to him and ask them while they're burning questions about places he's investigated and what he's up to. So he's only there for that night.
And don't be nervous. He
Yeah.
is a buff, kind of stoic kind of dude, but he's actually really
He's
nice.
a nice guy. He's a
Yeah.
nice guy.
I like making him laugh.
Yeah.
I try.
So he's going to be out with us that night, which is cool.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
And IPR will be there too, right?
Interstate
So-
Paranormal's coming out as guests. A lot of them have
Yeah.
never been to the fort before, so they're very excited about coming out. So they're going to be out on the 9:30 tour. They have a huge group coming, so I don't know who's going to be at the manor because Daryl's going to be with me, and I'm sure Trey's I believe is coming, and he's going to be working as DSGI that night, not
Oh,
My
cool.
Haunted Manor, because he's still a DSGI team member, so
Yeah.
I'm putting him to work. Hoping Jeff will make it. So,
Yeah.
and Interstate Paranormal is going to be a group of their own.
Yeah, that's because they're very excited.
Yeah, they are.
I've been talking to them and they're like, we're excited.
I know.
And they're all like, why aren't you going? And I'm like, I'm at Disney World.
Oh, right.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Hopefully.
excited.
Hopefully, as long as
It depends on
no more
the
hurricanes.
storms coming.
Oh,
through.
true.
There's
Yeah.
a couple out there.
Yeah. October 26th, which is a Saturday, we do a 6:30 tour, which is 3 hours, and then we go into our extended tour, which is at 9:30, but it's 5 hours long. It's smaller groups.
Is that the only night you're doing extended?
Yes. We used to do 2 extendeds.
Too much.
It's brutal. It's
Yeah.
brutal on all of us. But yeah, so that's our only extended. It's smaller groups. You do pay more money for your ticket, but again, that ticket money is going back in towards the restoration of the fort.
Yeah.
And we take you into some other areas of the fort that you don't get to investigate on a 3-hour tour.
Sounds
On the
like
3-hour tour,
Gilligan, right?
Yeah, right.
3-hour
I know. So the 3-hour tour, DSGI is stationary.
Yes.
We're in our location. But with the extended, you're assigned a DSGI team member to your group, and we travel
Go around.
with you to your location.
And you have longer time periods?
Yeah, you have longer time periods. You got about a 20, maybe 30, I can't even remember. I think it's 30 minutes at each location. So it does.
And how many people do you have on the extended?
For public,
Yeah.
we sell 50 tickets compared to 70.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and usually I find that the extended tour, the people that come to that are a lot more serious minded than not. You know, some of them
Well,
bring their own
of course.
They want to
equipment.
dig
Certainly.
in.
Yeah.
So I'm going on that tour.
The extended.
I have signed up for it, and you guys didn't see, but when she was talking about it, I was doing a happy dance because I'm really excited.
Yeah.
Because I want to experience
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
And
it'll be fun.
also, Debbie almost fought you for being my tour guide.
Did
she?
she?
was like, "You could come with me," and I was like, "Gina already called it." Sorry.
She's so funny.
Yeah. She's
Yeah.
like, fine.
Well, maybe you get both of us. It depends on how many we have that
Yeah,
night.
there you go.
But yeah, so it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. There's a lot of behind the scene things that happen to make these tours, go into.
So if we go back and listen to our first interview
Yes.
with
Yeah.
DSGI about all the cables that you have.
Oh yeah, not anymore.
Muskrats.
The muskrats
You
shoot
have
through
to
our
do the
cables.
muskrats
Yeah.
chewing the cables, but even without the cables,
Yeah,
it's a
it's a
lot of
lot.
setup and
Yeah.
organization.
When Daryl came with us to the overnight, I was talking to him about the cables. We were walking around the fort, and I said to him, we did these cables, and he's looking at me like, cables? And I told him how we, brought them up through all the different levels of the fort, over the roof of the fort, off the fort
And
roof.
this is just to get the lighting and the cameras.
To run
Cameras.
the DVA, the run, and he
cameras.
was like, "Oh my god!" I mean, it was a tremendous amount of work. Tremendous amount of work. It's a very well-oiled machine now. The tours, like it has been for a long time. But I'm one of the founders of the tours.
And you have a stable group, right?
Yeah,
You've had
yeah.
a
But I still
stable-
worry, because it's like my baby,
Right.
Yeah.
and I want to
sure.
make sure it goes off well and people are happy and.
And if it doesn't, you just blame Andy.
I do blame Andy for quite a bit. But I have, Michelle at Fort Delaware, who's awesome,
Yeah.
and she keeps me in the loop and tells me, what's going on, and
She's so accommodating.
oh my God, yeah, and the check-in people who are doing the check-ins over at the on the island side,
Yeah.
our fort staff, they have my number, so sometimes I get an early heads up, like,
Yeah.
Purple Group's going to be
Wild.
so then I'm like, great, can't wait, and then I can give a heads up to whoever's going to have them.
Yeah.
Like, when you guys have Purple Group, just, you're probably not going to be able to investigate because they're going to be all over, which has happened. But,
We used to live about, 4 miles away,
Yeah.
and go to Delaware City
Yeah.
a lot. 'Cause
Yeah.
it was a good place to go and walk.
Yeah.
or go to Krabby Dick's.
yeah,
And
we've done a
there's-
lot of houses in there.
Lots of cute events there too.
There's
Yeah.
been, a lot of the houses have been restored.
Yes,
So there's been a
we've
lot.
investigated a lot of buildings over at Fort DuPont.
That was my other question, is Fort DuPont is still there?
Mhm.
But
Oh,
they
yeah.
don't do investigations there?
So the Preservation Corporation has taken that over because it was like state park, and then it got sold to the Preservation Company. So now they have these beautiful homes there that they've built. So it's become a regular community. They're trying to bring back, like, there's a movie theater there.
Really?
With the
Really built
old
that up.
projectors
Cool.
upstairs with the film and all that. We actually investigated that location several years ago. We actually had to wear masks because of the dust and everything else that's in there. We investigated that building, the Painter Building, which was an old hospital, was barracks. It was a couple different things that we actually caught a really loud scream from that building, which is on our website.
There was a mental hospital.
So the Governor Bacon is still
Governor
there.
Bacon,
It's
right.
shut down.
But the building's so
The building's still there. And some of the other older buildings are still there, but the homes are, brand new homes. And some of the homes are old historical homes that they renovated. And some of these homes came from, like Fort Delaware, and they floated them across the river and put them on Fort DuPont property years ago. I mean, years and years and years ago. So a lot of the homes are being restored there.
Does anybody report hauntings just because
Oh,
of the
yeah,
area?
yeah.
In the homes, even the new ones?
Yeah, well, one of the houses we did there, it was an older home. It was one of the homes that was floated over. And the homeowner was reporting, all sorts of activities. She practices Wiccan. And so I said to her, I think you're a little beacon, for the activity in this house. I think they gravitate towards her. But the interesting part, and this is where Debbie comes into play, I had spoken to the homeowner, and she was like, footsteps. A lot of times it was when her husband wasn't home. He traveled, so she'd be home with the dogs, and she and the dogs would be in bed, and she'd clearly hear somebody come up the stairs type thing. And so before we actually did the investigation, I called Debbie and I said, can you do me a favor? Can you go to this house? I don't want you to get into the details of the history, but can you just walk through the house and take notes? And then don't divulge your information until after we do our investigation. No problem. So she went. She met with the homeowner. The homeowner knew she was coming. We gave her the heads up. Debbie did a whole entire walkthrough, took notes, and then we did an investigation. And the things that we found in our investigation and what the homeowner had told us, but she didn't share this information with Debbie. Debbie had sent us her notes, and we didn't read her notes until after we had completed an investigation. And a lot of what Debbie picked up was what we found. Yeah. So it was interesting in that respect. But
so how did the homeowner handle that then?
Fine. Yeah. She was comfortable with it. Yeah. And she understood that it was, you're living in a very old historic location, and you're living in a very old historic home. Yeah. Plus, she was, she's Wiccan and she practices, and I think they felt very comfortable
because she brings the energy.
She brings the energy. Yeah. We actually investigated twice. The first time she packed up her altar and all that. Yeah. And I knew she had an altar, and I said to her, I said, what did you do with your altar? She said, no, I packed it away. So I said, you didn't have to. Leave it out, because I don't want you to disrupt what you normally do, just because we're in here investigating. So the second time she left it up. But and I think the second time it may not have been as active as the first time. The first time I put a stationary recorder in their basement, and their basement is like, if I remember right, it was kind of like dirt floor and like stone foundation. If you ever watched the movie or the show Ghosts, have you ever watched that show Ghosts?
No.
On TV?
I have seen it, yeah.
Yeah. They have to have the basement ghosts.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how you would imagine basement ghosts to be, like living in that kind of. So I left my recorder down there, and I just had it stationary running. And when I went back to listen to my audio, because there was always a vibe of kids being around there, I picked up this EVP of a little boy, and it sounds like he has a British accent.
Oh.
And I can hear Adam talking. But I can hear this
everybody
here
talking.
Sorry, Adam.
I know. But I could hear this little boy, and I'm like, and it was wintertime, and it was freezing outside. There was and it was late at night. There was no kids outside. Yeah. They didn't even have kids, and they weren't home. So I'm like, where the hell is this little voice coming from? Yeah. But it was definitely like a playful, but he had like a little British accent. So
is that the place where she drove up and she heard kids laughing when she got out of the car?
Yep.
Okay. I'm remembering the other side of that story.
Yeah.
You can go back and listen to Debbie's interview.
Which was extremely interesting
really
as well.
Interesting. I swear, all of you
Diamond
guys.
State is just awesome.
You guys pop off with your stories. I love it.
Yeah. So that was an interesting, but Delaware City has got a lot of old historical locations in there.
So what's the best way for people to get a hold of you, of your group?
You can follow us on social media. We're
You
on
have
Facebook.
a lot of stuff up on your...
Yeah,
That's
Facebook
right.
and Instagram. And then if you go to our website, which is DiamondStateGhostInvestigators.com, you can meet the team, and read all about team members. And
Christie's Chronicles.
Christie's
Shout out
Chronicles
Christy.
are on there. Our evidence vault has
Yeah.
all sorts of evidence from different locations.
And really good evidence too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a podcast back in February with Ron and Lourdes' group, Entity.
Oh, Staticom.
Yeah, it's Staticom, but they have their own Entity Voices.
Yeah.
And we sent them basically 10 clips,
Uh-huh.
evidence clips. And
Cool.
they basically review them and listen to them live on the
neat.
podcast. And then they give us their feedback. And so
That's cool.
yeah, so it was me, Andy, and Kyle on the team. We were on the podcast with them. So they played the different clips that we sent them, and they were like, my God, you guys have some really good evidence. I'm like, thank you. But yeah, Evidence Vault. We have an online store that you can access and buy shirts, hoodies. And right now, I'm wearing this one. This
Yes,
is an
that's
Andy
cute,
Lenway
October.
design. So this is for breast cancer awareness. And if you go on our website to the online store and you purchase one, we will donate the proceeds to the breast cancer research
Cool.
for the month of October.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you guys are
That
awesome.
one. So we need a picture afterwards so we can post
Sure.
the three.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yep. So
Oh.
Matt runs our website. So big shout out to Matt.
Yeah, of course. Always shout out.
And we did
He's a good guy.
interview Matt.
And yes, there,
Mhm.
So
there's
that,
a
again,
throwback to Matt. Go listen to his
listen to
episode.
his interview.
I really enjoy, I was just saying this last night too, I really enjoy how he investigates and how like analytical he is
He's
about it.
extremely analytical.
But that like we need that in
Yeah.
people. You
He's
know?
very black or white,
Yeah.
Matthew.
Yeah.
He's always been like that
Yeah.
since he was little. But yeah, he
I love it.
and I, it's funny when we investigate, we don't always end up pairing up together. We sometimes do. But yeah, he's, especially when it comes to like Penhurst.
Yeah.
That third floor. He loves that third floor. But he strategically like puts his equipment down
Yes.
and he knows where to sit and where to listen.
Yeah.
Where I kind of go up there and go, I think I'll put my REM pod in this room. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but he's very analytical.
We had some interesting stuff happen. I'm gonna make a video video episode about our third floor experience.
At Mayflower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Not as quite as intense as his stories.
Mm-hmm.
Again, go
but
listen to
go
his
listen to
interview
that.
on
Well,
the
it's funny
podcast.
because Matthew, when we investigated Trans-Allegheny, we had already, of course, investigated Penhurst multiple times. But Trans-Allegheny, for me personally, was very intense. Like very, very, very intense. I've never experienced activity like that. And for him, Penhurst is more active
Yeah.
than Trans-Allegheny. We weren't in the same group. We were in different groups. But
Yeah.
it was, Trans-Allegheny was like off the hook crazy.
Yeah.
And Penhurst, while I've heard things and seen things, it didn't bring to me the same intensity
Yes.
that Trans-Allegheny did.
Right.
So,
When you say intense, what do you mean?
like, it was palpable, the
Yeah, so you
energy
felt the
in
energy
Trans-Allegheny.
Okay.
Like, you walked in there and you were just like, ugh,
Yeah,
you
well,
know, like that
so
dread.
that's what we
Mhm.
keep
Yeah.
hearing, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Christy, shout out Christy's episode. She talked about that, her experiences in there.
Yeah, so that area, we had been up in that area where she got the scratch. We were up in that area. My group was me, Andy, Fred, and Melissa. And we were in that area where she got scratched. And it was very, not to mention the hallways are a quarter mile long
Yeah.
in Trans-Allegheny. And it's pitch black.
Yeah.
You can't see your hand in front of your face, but you hear all these noises, right? And you can hear movement around you. And you feel like they're like almost on top of you. And at one point, me, Andy, and Melissa and Fred were standing literally in a straight line and looking down this very dark hallway. And Andy's like, we need to shut off our flashlights. So he shut off our lights. And you could hear, like, it sounded like a big dude coming towards us. And it was kind of like boom, 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 like coming closer and closer. And I was about 2 seconds from turning on my light because it was like freaking me out how fast and how heavy the footsteps were. And all of a sudden it just stopped. And it was kind of like, gotcha, you know? And so,
messing with you.
Yeah. And then, you know, we spent a lot of time up there. And then when Christy was up there, when she came down, I could tell instantly like something was up.
Yeah.
And I went over to her and I'm like, what's the matter? What's going on? And she said, I got scratched. And she did. I mean, it was like a welt scratch on her lower back.
Oof.
And so that's when, you know, we decided to break up guys and girls. Girls went to the guy side. Guys went to the girl side. Poor Christy probably didn't really want to go up there, but she also wasn't going to let it get to her.
Yeah.
And so we're like, you're going to be with us, you know, we're all together. So she reluctantly but willingly did return, and for some reason we ended up going back down the same area where Andy and I and all them heard the footsteps. I was leading the way, and everybody else was trailing behind me, and I made this right turn to stand kind of in the area where we heard that person come up behind us, and there was a room, and it had playing cards and marbles and stuff on the floor. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't remember seeing those before. But Adam's group had been in that area in between all that. So I'm like, oh, maybe Adam brought trigger objects and had left them on the floor or whatever. Right. And so as I'm standing there going, I don't remember this stuff being here, I hear all this commotion behind me. And all I see is Christy being pushed by Debbie forward. Like, get the hell out of the way.
Yeah.
And like Debbie had a look on her face like, this is not good. And so I'm like, what is going on? And you could hear that boom, 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 boom coming towards us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if this is Andy, I'm going to effing kill him, right? Because I knew he was with the guys.
Yeah.
And then I'm like kind of waiting, and there was no Andy.
Yeah.
And then we all realized it's just us girls up here.
Yeah.
And so basically I just said, look, you can have your fun and games. You're not scaring us. We're not going away.
Right.
So stay in your corner. We'll stay in our corner, mutual respect, but don't do that again. That's not funny at all.
That's not nice.
And it kind of quieted, and we sat on the floor. But then there was just this feeling like, okay, you guys need to get up and get out of here. Yeah. And so at that point, it was like just
energy was
very heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, nothing I've ever really felt before, but it was just like that inner fight or flight. Mm-hmm. And I was like, we have to get out of here. And that's when I'm like, said to the girls, I'm like, come on, we gotta move on. So we did. But yeah.
Did you ever find out about the objects? How they ended up there?
No, I don't know if they were there and I just didn't notice them before. But Debbie could see in her mind the guy that was up there.
She's psychic.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I asked her, I said, did you see him? She said, yes, she saw him. And she said, and she described him, which now I can't remember all the details. But I think it was more like he was a prankster. Like, you know, like somebody standing in the corner waiting for all the people to pass, and then like
an Andy.
Like coming up from behind you and going, boom. You know, like that's the kind of feeling I got. I know Christy thought maybe it
Dead
was
Andy.
Yeah, like the scratch wasn't anything evil, just more like, hey, don't leave.
Yeah.
You know, and
like she said it was like reaching out to her.
Could have been. I mean, we don't know, but it was definitely a different feeling in Trans-Allegheny. However, I can't wait to go back, and we're hoping to go back next year.
And don't check the trunk because I'll be in it.
Hey, where did Emily come from? It's huge. I mean, it's mind blowing how big that building is.
Yeah.
You can I couldn't even imagine walking through there by myself.
So
now, would you sleep there? Sorry.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
The lobotomy area was a little freaky. Andy did see. Andy did see a big.
That's the area for me.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll do
Well,
it.
there's pictures. It's awful.
Live, laugh, lobotomy.
Yeah, there's actually pictures of
Yeah.
a young boy.
Don't like that at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, that's pretty
But yeah,
gruesome.
we were down there, and Andy actually saw a big, tall shadow figure go past him, and he kind of went, "Whoa!" Like it was
Yeah.
like in his face.
Wow.
But yeah,
Who runs Trans-Allegheny?
I believe it is owned by the state, I think, but they have
And
mostly
this is
volunteers.
West Virginia.
Yeah, it's in Weston, West Virginia. They have volunteers that they have paid staff, but they have mostly volunteers that run the daytime tours. Like you can do a history walking tour, or you can do a history ghost tour, or you can privately investigate, which is what we do. It's literally in the center of town. Like there's neighborhoods and houses all around it. But as much as I thought I saw of Trans-Allegheny, there's whole sections that
You didn't even make it
even
to.
like there's the Civil War side, there's the TB unit side, there's a separate building out back that is for mentally insane.
Can you go in that building?
They didn't allow us at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if they opened up more
Yeah.
buildings,
But
but,
it was,
that might be
there
a
were
dangerous-
prisoners there, right?
yeah, during the Civil War, I'm sure
Yeah.
they had some sort of
Adult
prisoners there.
We did go into this a
Yeah,
little bit in
yeah.
an episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
So listen for our.
Yeah, so listen to that.
Listen
But
for that.
yeah, it's a crazy place. But
Yeah.
yeah, so everybody, you know, Matt thinks, you know, he's like, Trans-Allegheny was good, but I think Penhurst was
Yeah.
better. And I'm like, I disagree. I thought Trans-Allegheny was like crazy
Yeah.
intensity.
Well, see, my Penhurst wasn't off the chart crazy. We got evidence. There was some interesting things that happened to us that were like, yeah, that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is definitive, actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't overwhelmed by any of it, and there
Mhm.
were times when there wasn't a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But it was interesting, and we got a lot of good stuff. So I can't wait to put that out.
Yeah, I know one of the
Yeah.
team members one time going, I forget what, Devon building maybe it was, they were going down to the basement,
Mm-hmm.
and the investigator from DSGI that was going down the stairs got to the bottom of the stairs first, and all of a sudden like froze, and there was a man standing down the hallway.
Oof.
And there was a chair in a hallway, and he was standing there with his hands on the back of the chair, like just standing there looking down.
Oh.
And when the DSGI team member got to the bottom of the staircase, that man looked up and then turned and walked into the wall. And he was like freaked out,
Yeah,
totally freaked out.
because that's like vivid.
Very vivid. He
Wow.
didn't even want to go down there
Yeah.
afterwards because he was like, I don't want to go down there.
That's an intense place down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is an intense.
Yeah. And then when I went there,
Mhm.
I walked down that way and was by that chair, and I thought, it just has that freaking creepy vibe down there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that chair's still there.
It probably is. It's like right in the hallway.
Yeah, I'm sure we could go through. Jeff and Trey did a lot of recording and pictures and stuff.
Yeah,
so
which
have
they
some cool
actually
stuff.
filmed our whole investigation, which
Yeah.
I give them shit about because I'm like, well, I guess now that you're with my haunted manor, I'm never going to get my footage of Penhurst, right?
Jeff and I had talked about it because he was saying that he was like trying to do a documentary. He was like kind of
Mhm.
putting stuff together, and then like he has so much. I was like, I'll help you.
Mhm.
I know how to video edit. Like, give me the footage.
Mhm.
I will help get this done
Yeah.
because that's fascinating. This.
Yeah, when they first joined my haunted
Interesting.
manor, I'm like, so Jeff, I guess I'm not getting my Penhurst footage, and he just started laughing. He's like, I know. It's
No,
a
but
lot.
we had to talk about that.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Did you hear the announcements that
Yeah,
they did
yeah,
yesterday?
yeah, that's cool.
So now they have the jail in California.
Yeah.
So that's going to be
that's cool.
even less time for Jeff to get that done. So
Mhm.
maybe he should just give it to me. You hear that?
Yeah, I'll tell him.
I'll get
Yeah,
it done.
just because you have so much time on your
Yeah,
hands.
because I have all the time in the world.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess maybe more than he does. So
Yeah, I don't know how either one of them are doing it.
I
but
know.
I do worry about them,
Yeah.
you know. Because they're still my team members, so I still worry
Sure,
about them.
they're your boys.
They're my boys, my baby boys. They're my son and
boys.
little brother.
Yeah.
That's a whole different 2:30 in the morning conversation.
Yeah.
Just the three of us.
I actually, when I was talking to you, I went over to him because we were saying something else, and I was like, oh, she just told me that you said she was your mom. And he was like, I said that? LOL.
Yeah, because he was like, Jeff's your son, or Trey's your son, and he goes, well, then I'm your son too. And I'm like, well, no, I would have been 12 if I gave birth to you. So I said, no, you're like my little brother.
Yeah. Can I be your sister? Sure. Awesome.
And I'm not even going to be asked to be your mother.
Auntie.
Right.
All right. We're
Old enough to be your mother.
maybe we'll cut all that out. I don't know. It might make it people coming that want to join the team.
Oh,
Talk
so
about
we
that.
will be putting out an application on our website. We'll make announcements when we're recruiting. When we are recruiting, there are going to be minimum requirements that everybody has to abide to. Being that Fort Delaware is our biggest and most important event throughout the year, you have to commit to 4 nights working the fort. Like, there's just no ands, ifs, buts about it, unless otherwise it's been arranged. But you're expected to be at the fort 4 nights. You have to be 18 or older. You have to have a car. You have to have,
Training.
reliable transportation. You have to be ready to travel out of state if necessary. You have to be able to stand for long periods of time. You have to be able to walk for long periods of time. You have to be able to lift at least 15 pounds, if not more, because the equipment's heavy.
Yeah. And you don't have to specifically be in Delaware. You can be in
Right.
in the area.
Yeah, you can be in the
tri-state
tri-state area.
So and also you have to go through training.
You have to go through training. We sign it, and the process is, once we get the applications in, I review them. I give them to the rest of the board members because since we are a nonprofit, we do have a board. And then once the board and I have decided, we give it to the team, and then we set up interviews, and we do it kind of like rapid dating. So we set up in tables, and you have to interview with the whole team. Everybody asks different questions, and then we kind of boil it down from there.
Do they have a little cheat sheet checklist?
Yeah, we give them, so you have
That's
your
awesome.
questions, you have your questions, and then at the end, we pull from that to see who we like the best. And then in the past, we've done mock investigations at Fort Delaware or Fort Mifflin to see how you interact and how you investigate. And then if you're brought onto the team, you're on probation, you're considered an investigator in training for a year, and you're on probation for a year. But you get a DSGI senior member as a mentor for 6 months. And then for the last 6 months, you don't have a mentor, but obviously any of us are there to guide you and help you.
And how many positions are you looking?
It really depends on the quality of the candidates, maybe 4 to 5,
Cool, fresh meat. I can interview them later.
So it's a big responsibility. It is a commitment. It's not just a hobby. It's not just it's a volunteer group. We are registered with the federal government.
Yes.
And we take what we do very seriously and
Maintain standards.
and
Yes.
maintain standards. And-
Professionals.
yeah,
Professionalism.
and we sometimes I will pay for trips, out of our account, and that's how you don't get a paycheck, but you might be able to go to Trans-Allegheny for free. You know what I mean? So it's a huge commitment, and if you just don't have the time or the energy, or evidence reviews huge, participating, not only do you have to do the 4 nights at the fort, but you also have to do other events throughout the year.
Yeah.
And team meetings don't count as an event. So, and you have to be, proactive in communication's a big key.
Yeah.
Are you looking for any specific skill sets? I know
you have to be comfortable. Yeah, you have to be comfortable speaking in the public because, I do the speeches at the fort. I literally talk to 140 people every night.
Yeah.
So by the end of October, I've talked to over 1,000 people.
Yeah.
You know, and you're going to be expected that when you're in a location, you can address the group and be comfortable talking to the group.
Yeah,
So
because you might have 10 people right there.
you might have 10, you might have 15,
Yeah.
or you might have 3. You know, you just never know.
Never know.
So being comfortable with speaking in front of people, being professional, being technical helps, you know, like if you know how to use Facebook, you know how to use any kind of social media, you know how to use a recorder, like just common sense technical stuff
Yeah.
is a benefit. But we can easily weed people out just by the application process.
Yeah.
So that'll probably start in
And
January.
the application is from your online
It's going to be on our
It will
website.
be.
in January.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably January, February.
We'll probably shout it out when that happens.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't really have a number in mind. For me, it's more quality than it is quantity.
Yeah.
But we are contracted with the state that we have to have at least 7 DSGI team members at the fort for every tour. So
Yeah.
I have to abide by our contract, and
Mhm.
you know, it's always better to have more than less. So
Yeah. Cool.
yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for coming and
Thank
giving us
you.
the lowdown.
I know the
This is
history part I
great.
probably could have done better, but there's like I
Yeah,
said,
it's
this
good.
is perfect.
It
it's
was
the
good.
history it's a ton.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a
It's
ton,
a lot,
and there's
a lot.
different eras of the fort. So depending on
Yeah.
which one you want to learn about,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
just go to the fort during
go
the
to
day.
the fort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do a
There's
history
people
tour.
that's their job to do,
Mm-hmm.
and that's awesome.
Yep.
And then come look at all the stuff on their website.
Yep.
I'll have all the information in the show notes.
Okay.
So there'll be links and everything.
Perfect.
You can find everything that you'd ever want to know about DSGI
Mhm.
right there.
Yep.
And the fort.
And the fort.
And the fort. Yeah.
Yep.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yay.
I look forward to seeing
Great.
at least you, right?
Oh yeah, definitely
Oh, yeah.
me.
Hopefully
Definitely
that-
me. Both,
Hopefully you
Not
too.
me.
both nights.
Yeah.
That I have tickets for.
Yeah. The extended is definitely you're
I'm-
gonna like the extended.
Super excited.
Yeah.
So
That's a cool night.
yay.
All right. Yay.
Okay.
All right. We will see you soon.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you have a story you'd like to tell us, please email us at onlyghostsinthebuilding@gmail.com, or you can find us on Instagram at Only Ghosts in the Building or Facebook at Only Ghosts in the Building. We also have a Patreon at patreon.com/Only Ghosts in the Building, and you can come join for free, or we have a $1 a month tier or a $5 a month tier. Come check us out. We have a lot of good content there. I really enjoy the app and all its capabilities. You can listen, you can watch, and you can read and check out all our content right on there. We have merch for sale at onlyghostsinthebuilding.com. There's some really cute stuff, including kids' clothes. Go check that out. Thank you so much. We will see you soon.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.